having had the opportunity to speak with Diliana and having had her as my guest on Humanity vs. Insanity about 10 days ago now, actually, it was one of the easiest shows I think I've ever done because Diliana was so on top of her subject. It was just like, yeah, run. And what you're going to see here is the enthusiasm, the insightfulness, and the spirit of genuine investigative journalism. Not done from behind the screen of a computer or synthesizing the reports that are elsewhere on the web, but actually getting out on the ground and doing her own research. So, and it's her first time speaking in the UK. Yeah. And, of course, it's not her first. What number language is English for you? Second? Okay. Third, maybe? Yeah. So, obviously, and it's always a pleasure to have people from overseas. And, so do bear in mind that English is not her first language. And so she's having to sort of think and talk in a different language that which she normally does. But enjoy and be inspired by the enthusiasm of Diliana Gatenshiva.
In short, first I want to thank Ian. I want to thank Patrick from 21st Century Wire for inviting me to be here and to be able to talk about my last investigation. In brief, I'm a Bulgarian investigative journalist and a Middle East correspondent. Why and how I came across this topic. In December of 2016, I was reporting on the Battle of Aleppo. I was with the local cameraman when the jihadists from the so-called moderate rebels, Al-Qaeda, retreated from their positions. I got inside 9 underground warehouses full of heavy weapons, with Bulgaria as their country of origin. When I got back in my home country, I traced back these shipments, and it turned out that these Bulgarian weapons were just a small part of a bigger international weapons shipment network organized by the US Special Operations Command, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and my home country was just one of the many countries involved in this international scheme on 350 diplomatic flights. Probably this is what you haven't heard here in the UK, that all these weapons were transported to Syria, Iraq, Africa, wherever you can imagine around the world on diplomatic flights carried out by the Azerbaijan's state-run company, Silkway Airlines. So I published this investigation, 21st Century. Yes, they were the only UK media outlet which published this investigation. And I got publicity, not in Western media, no, but thanks to Patrick, this story made headlines, and I started to follow all the weapons programs of the Pentagon. To my shock, I found out that these weapons programs for weapons, Eastern European weapons on diplomatic flights to Syria and to Yemen, they're nothing compared to this. The US biolaboratories. I found documents about Pentagon biolaboratories in the country of the Republic of Georgia in particular, and I started to follow that story. I wanted to find why the Pentagon has a military biolaboratory in such a small country, so far away, but bordering on the US main rival, Russia. And I got access to documents, talked to witnesses, and this is how I found out that the Pentagon has biolaboratories in 25 countries across the world. And these biolaboratories, as you have the opportunity to see on the map that I prepared for you, These biolaboratories border on the US main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran. What I'm going to talk about now, this is on the photo that I featured, this one. This is the US military factory. I will talk about it in detail. I will show you a lot of documents about the projects, the viruses, bacteria, and toxins produced here at this military facility. It is in the United States. But this is just one of the many biolaboratories, of the many facilities. Well, I'm going to talk about synthetic viruses. GM insects are engineered for military needs. This is probably the most I was really frightened when I verified the authenticity of the documents about the military experiments with insects. I'm going to talk about ethnic bioweapons, and I want to stress that this is absolutely independent investigative journalism. Everything that I do, I'm a freelance journalist. Nobody's behind me, probably only 21st Century Wire. Only they publish my investigations here in the UK, and I'm very thankful to them. In the beginning, I want to give more information about one comparison between biological weapons versus nuclear weapons. Biological weapons, if used under optimal conditions, have greater killing capacity than nuclear weapons. The information that I show now, it is from a report to the US Congress from 1993. You can read it. I featured this very interesting report. I never knew that, for example, 100 kilograms of anthrax, 100 kilograms anthrax spores could cause between 1 and 3 million deaths. I didn't know that 1 gram of botulinum toxin by the inhalational route can kill as many as 1 million people, this one. This can kill 1 million people. This can kill 3 million people. This is 1 megaton hydrogen bomb. Its detonation in a major urban area would result in between 500,000 and 1.9 million deaths. So you can compare and you can realize why biological weapons are more powerful and dangerous than nuclear weapons, but nobody talks about biological weapons. So we must all hold our governments accountable, because not only the United States has such programs. In the United Kingdom, Patangon, as we all read recently, also had such programs and still have. Here, in short, the name of this program of the United States is Cooperative Biological Engagement Program, and it is 2.1 billion military program. And now I want to show you on the map. You can see where these biolaboratories are located, mainly around Russia, China, Iran, plus Africa. This is the structure. 3 US departments and agencies, they are involved in the military program: the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, US Army Test and Evaluation Command, and Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I will start with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, because it is in charge of the biolaboratories. Here, this is the Luga Center. This is the Pentagon Biolaboratory in Georgia. It is located just 70 kilometers from the US Vaziani military base. Here, this is Luga Center. Here, this is the US Vaziani military air base in the capital, Tbilisi. Tasked with the military program are biologists from the US Army Medical Research Unit in Georgia, along with private contractors. The Biosafety Level 3 laboratory is accessible only to US citizens with security clearance. They are accorded diplomatic immunity under agreement between the United States and Georgia on defense cooperation. It was signed in 2002. If you want to read more about the projects, the documentation about these projects, here I featured a link. Again, you can read the article in full, published by 21st Century Wire. Among the projects, research on bioagents such as anthrax, tularemia, and viral diseases such as Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, and the collection of biological samples for future experiments. This is what is written in the documents. Future experiments. Now, this is the proof here that this program is classified information because according to the Defense of Department requirements for contractors under the Defense Threat Reduction Program in former Soviet Union countries such as Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, the American employees performing work under this program must be only American citizens, here it is written, and must have been granted appropriate security clearance. Here, this is the agreement that I talked about between the United States and Georgia. Now, I will pause the presentation for a short while to offer you to see the reaction of the US Assistant Secretary of the United States when I asked him about this. Why foreigners, American citizens with diplomatic immunity and security clearance, why and what exactly they do in Georgia or in this military biolaboratory at the Luga Center? And his answer was a surprise. I offer you to see what he said. Why has the Pentagon been operating military biolaboratories in 25 countries, bordering on the US main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran? And why has the number of deadly outbreaks in all those countries increased dramatically since the start of the military program of the United States in these countries?
I will just say unequivocally and undeniably, the US does not have a military biological weapons program. Period. End of statement. Number two, we have been working, and I do know for the Department of Defense, they've been working with partners in parts of the world to ensure that those laboratories, and we train them on how to do diagnostic tests on these diseases to ensure that they can manage them and also safely secure those pathogens so they're not accessible by terrorists or by criminals who would do ill with them.
While all these projects classified information, all these biolaboratories of the Pentagon in 25 countries across the world, why are they classified information?
They're not classified. They're openly available to anyone who wants to look at them.
No, I tried.
Okay.
No, this is not true. They're classified information.
No. You had your chance. It's not an investigation here. I'm very sorry.
Why are you talking about?
But of course, but I will not let you.
Why can't
I
we
will
talk
not
about,
give you the word like this. We try to answer your questions, please. I know that you have done a good job. I know you want to ask questions about that, but that's not the place. If you want to talk to Mr. Kat, you can take an appointment on another day. Case closed. Thank you very much.
Just one more question.
No more questions.
You can take questions right now.
What is the need of military biolaboratories of the United States in 25 countries across the world?
I can't answer that question. That's not his capacity.
This is public area. I can use the elevator. I can use the elevator.
Sorry, not this one. This one's full.
No, it is not full. Please, I can use the elevator. I can use the elevator. Come.
No more questions then.
Why not?
Okay, we're either going down.
Why is the Pentagon investing
We've gotta get
$65
going.
million in gene editing?
I'm sorry.
The gene editing is part of these programs. Can you answer why?
No, we can't.
After this incident, the security guards came and we were expelled. In Bulgarian language, we say like dirty cats. This is the word that I can use. Anyway, so you see, he said, these biolaboratories are openly available to anybody who wants to look at them. No, this is not true. Everything is classified, and only American citizens can look at them. I'm not an American citizen. I can't look at them. Anyway, this is just one of the many lies that Robert Kadlec, the US Assistant Secretary at the US Department of Health, he lied blatantly in front of the MPs at the European Parliament in Brussels. Can you imagine if he can do it in front of MPs in Brussels? Can you imagine what actually happens and what other lies they use to justify their programs and their crimes? This guy that I put in the red circle, he is again, or at least was, a high-ranking US official. This is 2011, the inauguration of the Luga Center. Here, this is Mr. Andrew Weber, then US Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense Programs. Currently, he works for this American company, Metabiota, which happens to be one of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency contractors at Luga Center. So he signed all the contracts, opened the facility, and then went to work for the private contractor. No conflicts of interest, no. I was shocked. How is it possible? Private companies are allowed to work here, to operate with viruses, bacteria, and toxins. Private companies. They're contracted to perform work for the Pentagon under diplomatic cover. How can private companies be allowed to be diplomats without being diplomats? But this is what's happening in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Africa, in all the countries involved in this military program. Private contractors are awarded very lucrative contracts worth of $2 billion to create biological weapons. They don't call them biological weapons, they call them viruses, bacteria, and toxins for defense. I don't understand how a virus can be for defense. This practice is often used by the CIA to provide cover for its agents, the diplomatic immunity, which is provided to private contractors because they are not held accountable to Congress and they can operate more freely and move around the rule of law. US civilian personnel performing work at the Luga Center have also been given diplomatic immunity, although they are not diplomats. Hence, private companies can perform work under diplomatic cover for the US government without being under the direct control of the host state. In this case, the Republic of Georgia. Can you imagine, in the UK, foreigners came with diplomatic immunity without being diplomats and start to research, in other words, to create, genetically modify viruses, bacteria, and toxins. And your country will not be allowed to control them. What is this? For defense? I don't see what defensive is there in this US military program in 25 countries around the world. But Robert Kadlec said they don't have biological weapons program. No, they don't have such program. Now, I want to show you in detail information about these 3 private American companies performing work at the Luga Center in Georgia. One of them, the first company, private American company, CM2M It was awarded $341.5 million under this Pentagon program. And according to the presentation, which is confidential, but Mr. Kadlec said, no, this is not confidential, everybody can look at them. Don't ask me how I got access to this confidential presentation, but anyway, this presentation shows that, see, the subcontractor of the first American company is Battelle Memorial Institute. Battelle, as a subcontractor, has extensive experience in research on bioagents, as the company already worked on the US bioweapons program under 11 contracts with the US Army in the past, 11 contracts. So these are the former bioweapons scientists which, according to the confidential presentation of the first company, they research viruses, bacteria, and toxins. And this company, the second company, you will never find the name of the Battelle in the official documents or those documents which are in the public domain. This company, Battelle, is indicated here in the confidential presentation. So I investigated Battelle, if I pronounced correctly, I don't know. Battelle has a huge number of projects for the Pentagon, for the CIA. For example, one of the projects called Clear Vision, which was carried out in 1997 and in 2000, it was completed 3 years later. A joint investigation by the CIA and Battelle Memorial Institute reconstructed and tested a Soviet-era anthrax bomblet in order to test its dissemination characteristics. The project's stated goal was to assess bioagents' dissemination characteristics of bomblets. This is not for defense. I don't know why Robert Kadlec said that they don't have such a biological weapons program, but look at what the US did. Researched the characteristics of anthrax bomblet. And interestingly, the program wasn't and was omitted from the US Biological Weapons Convention declaration submitted to the UN. Probably they realized that this is not very legal, or at least this is in violation of the UN Convention. So this information was omitted. Battelle also operates a top secret biolaboratory. This is the top secret biolaboratory called National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasures Center at Port Detrick, Maryland. This is in the United States, and I checked the money, and the money here for actually 20 years. The first contract, it is 344.4 million federal contracts. The other is 70 million contracts. But this is top secret, although, and this is the proof that this is top secret. This is document which I also got access to, and I'm not allowed to go inside and to see what the United States scientists are doing inside this top secret facility in Maryland. And it is not openly available to anybody who wants to look at it. I don't want to go into details in terms of what types of viruses, how they genetically modify them. If you are interested and have such knowledge, you can read the projects and the documents featured in my article. It is published and it is on the website of 21st Century Wire. So I will not take your time now with that. But I want to stress that these viruses are genetically modified, meaning that they don't just isolate viruses, bacteria, and toxins and research them. They modify them genetically, and I don't see anything defensive in the fact that they genetically modify viruses. When they genetically modify viruses, they may use them for, and when they use them for military needs, this is something different from defense. This is offensive military program. A third company, American company, involved in the project at the Republic of Georgia. It is called Metabiota, and you saw the American official, which I put in the red circle. Now he works for this company called Metabiota. This American company has been awarded 18.4 million federal contracts under the Pentagon Defense Threat Reduction Agency program in Georgia and in Ukraine for scientific and technical consulting services. Metabiota products and services include global field-based biological threat research, pathogen discovery, outbreak response, and clinical trials. This is what is written on their website, whatever that means. But when I checked the US Federal Contracts Registry, I found out that this work includes $3.1 million project for the Pentagon in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is one of the countries at the epicenter of the Ebola virus here. And Metabiota worked on Pentagon's projects on the epicenter of the Ebola virus, epicenter of the Ebola crisis, where 3 US biolaboratories are situated. And interestingly, if you check the dates and the years, 2012, this is the time when Metabiota was sent in Sierra Leone for work for the Pentagon. In 2012, the Ebola crisis and the outbreak of Ebola in Sierra Leone and in this part of Africa was in 2015, when the project ended. This raises a lot of questions, and it is very suspicious, but we don't know what work Metabiota performed for the Pentagon, because although Mr. Kadlec claims that these biolaboratories are openly available, no, they are not. And we can't get access to see what these US citizens with diplomatic immunity and the diplomatic cover are doing in these military biolaboratories. This, in short, are the Pentagon's projects and experiments at the Lugar Center, and I want to start with this project, military experiments on biting insects. These photos, for example, this one, and these 2 photos, I got these photos from Georgian people. They sent me these photos. For example, this one. It is a biting fly in a bathroom in Tbilisi. These flies also are also I got them from people from Georgia, and people told me something which is very scary. They said that for the first time in Georgia, For example, they go to take a shower, and all of a sudden, they are being bitten by such flies while naked, and they can't protect themselves, and they don't have explanation as to why and from where these biting flies, how to fight them, and from where they're coming. So I checked in the documents, and in 2014, the Luga Center was equipped with an insect facility and launched a project on such biting flies. And the project covered a larger geographic area outside of Georgia, the Caucasus. And in the following years, as a result of this project, Tbilisi has been infested with biting flies. And these biting insects, look at this one and these flies, they live indoors in bathrooms all year long, which was not typical behavior of this species in Georgia previously. Normally, these flies and their season in Georgia is exceptionally short, from June to September. This photo was sent to me in November. So normally, these flies should not be in the bathrooms, or they can't survive. But look, they are in the bathrooms, they are on the streets, they are everywhere, and they survive, even in the sub-zero temperatures in the mountains in Georgia. I asked a lot of my friends in Georgia, and they all confirmed this problem with the insects, but they don't know from where these insects come and how to fight them. Biting flies, the same in Georgia here, the same flies to those in Georgia appeared in neighboring Dagestan. Dagestan is a republic from the Russian Federation. And according to local people, they bite and cause rashes. Their breeding habitats are house drains. And only if you think logically, what's and how flies from here came to Dagestan, it's not a long distance, but these are flies. They can't. It will take them kilometers, and it is a mountainous area. This is not possible. Probably somebody helped them to go to Dagestan in the people's houses. The disease is native, the disease which these flies carry, it is native to Iraq and Afghanistan. How come flies from Iraq and Afghanistan, how they appeared in Georgia and in Dagestan? It is something that I couldn't ask Mr. Kadlec because there wasn't enough space in the elevator. I don't know. There are a lot of documentation about the US biological programs involving insects in the past. I don't come, and I'm not from a generation which has much and many memories from the time where bioweapons were not banned from the UN conventions. So for me, it was a huge surprise to find that it was a normal practice in the United States, not only in the United States, to test viruses on insects. And here I showed documents for those who, like me, didn't know the existence of such experiments on insects. It is terrifying. They infected insects with dangerous, with lethal viruses, and tested if these insects can disseminate the virus, and if these insects, through bites, can transmit viruses to humans. If you want to familiarize yourself, you can read about Operation White Coat, which was performed on humans, not only on insects. mosquitoes, this is, I don't know, do you have problems with mosquitoes in here in the UK? But recently I read that UK company, Oxitec, produces GM mosquitoes and disseminate them in Brazil, where the Zika virus was a problem. I don't know why. They say they tried to reduce the population of mosquitoes, but the result was Zika virus. So probably here you must be very careful and mind the mosquitoes. Yesterday in the bathroom I saw a very big mosquito. I haven't seen such a big mosquito in my country. I don't know. If you want to read a lot about more about the mosquitoes and the test that the Pentagon has been performing on them in the past and now, you can follow these links. What shocked me was one document in particular in the past. The US Army tested how to kill 625,000 people for just 29 cents cost per death. And it turns out it's very cheap to kill 625,000 people. Can you imagine what these people were doing in the past? This is the very same what they're doing now. If this program was offensive, this means that the current program is also for military needs for offense, not for defense. I want to compare what they're doing now with what they did in the past, because this proves that their military program have never ended. Different operations by the Pentagon, they have names in the past. These are declassified documents. They spread insects from planes, from the ground, whatever means you can imagine, to test how these insects would survive and would they be able to transmit viruses after such fall from an airplane. And it turned out that yes, mosquitoes can bite even after such fall from an airplane. Interestingly, in these declassified documents, there is a section here which is not declassified. It is called mass production of one particular species, Aedes aegyptis, if I read it correctly. And this means that the same species of mosquitoes, which are alleged to be the vectors of dengue virus, Zika virus, yellow fever virus, they are still being produced because this part of the document is not declassified. And this means that the project is still ongoing. Although we are talking about operations carried out 40 years ago. Why they don't want to declassify this part about the production, mass production of mosquitoes? Probably because now they are using this technique and this mass production of this type of mosquito, which causes Zika virus, malaria, and other dangerous diseases. Mass production of mosquitoes for military needs. But this is not, but they are openly available to anybody who wants to look at them. Again, I want to stress. Another operation, photos. For me, it was very interesting to see volunteers. Here they stay and wait for the mosquitoes to bite them. I don't want to comment on that, but this is what they did. Now I will show you. Georgia, the same. See here. The volunteers, they weigh the mosquitoes. Georgia, these are not volunteers, but they also weigh the mosquitoes. And all of a sudden in Georgia, while weighing the mosquitoes and researching them, they discovered the very same species that I showed you a few slides ago, here, mass production of Aedes aegypti, the very same mosquito, so all of a sudden the tropical type of mosquito, they found it in Georgia. Never before seen tropical mosquito. It was found all of a sudden here in this tires. This is a photo which I found on the website of the Georgian Ministry of Health. When I published this investigation, the only reaction of the Georgian authorities was to delete the information. And luckily, there is an archive, and I can retrieve the information, but it's very indicative of the fact that probably the Georgian authorities have what to hide from their own people, not from me, but from their own people. They don't want the Georgians to know that the military biolaboratory inside the capital, Tbilisi, is finding all of a sudden tropical mosquitoes. And while researching in general, mosquitoes, and all of a sudden they find such never before seen mosquitoes. Interestingly, if you check where these mosquitoes are, south of Russia, Georgia, and northern Turkey, very close together. Also another type of tropical mosquito, never before seen in Georgia. You can see this type of mosquito only in southern Russia, in Tbilisi, in Georgia, and in Turkey. Strange coincidence. Not so strange if you start to read the projects of the Pentagon on anthrax. Pentagon scientists at Luga Center researched the Russian strain of anthrax. They researched the vaccine, actually the Russian type of the virus for which Russia has vaccine. And what's defensive is then the fact that the Pentagon researched the only type of anthrax for which Russia has vaccine. This is a very legitimate question. And if you are interested in the anthrax projects, you can read the full information about them. But I will not waste now your time because I want to show you other diseases which are spreading in Georgia. Do I have time? Yeah. Okay.
We have 30 minutes, yeah.
Okay, so this is a disease probably for which you have never heard of. It is not popular, but it is lethal. And it is called Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. 34 people became infected, among which a 4-year-old child with this Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever in 2014 as a result of a Pentagon project on Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. I put the documents about this Pentagon project. If you want to read it, you can. But what I want to stress, the project included tests on patients with fever symptoms and the collection of ticks as possible vectors of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever for laboratory analysis. But it turned out that from all collected ticks, only one was positive. And all blood samples of the animals were negative for this disease, meaning that the outbreak was not natural and the virus was spread intentionally among all these 34 villagers, by the way. These are people from rural areas in Georgia who have no knowledge of vaccines and whatever. So all of a sudden, these people got infected. Only humans were infected. the animals in the infected villages and the ticks, they were negative. It's strange how the virus jumped from nowhere to the people. There is no logical explanation other than intentional spread of the virus. Here I prove using documents from the Pentagon that the virus was spread intentional, because they say, if you notice something which is not natural, if, for example, you contract the disease and you don't know the source of the disease, and if the unusual routes of exposure, such as inhalational routes that normally occur through other exposures, if you notice something unusual, this means that you are a victim of a bioterrorism attack. So, in their words, bioterrorism attack was carried out in Georgia with this Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. Interestingly, at the same time, such attack, if I use the words of the Pentagon, happened in Afghanistan. 237 cases of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever have also been reported across Afghanistan, 41 of which were fatal as of December 2017. Interestingly, Afghanistan is one of the 25 countries across the world with Pentagon biolaboratories on their territory. The project is part of this huge cooperative biological defensive program, which is funded by the Pentagon, and the contractors working at the Luga Center in Georgia are the same for the program in Afghanistan. So we have the same diseases spreading in Georgia and in Afghanistan, and the same private American companies working in the same biolaboratories in Afghanistan and in Georgia. This is strange. Georgia is not that close to Afghanistan. How this virus spread to Afghanistan? This is something that, again, I couldn't ask Mr. Kadlec. Why the Pentagon collects and studies bats? For me, it was shocking to realize that the US Army is used to collect and to study bats. Bats are allegedly the reservoir hosts to the Ebola virus, Middle East respiratory syndrome, and other deadly diseases. For example, in Georgia, the US Army collected 221 bats, which were euthanized at the Luga Center for studies. And also, such collection of bats was performed not only in Georgia, in a number of countries abroad where the Pentagon has biolaboratories. So, interestingly, I want to show you something. We are told that the Middle East respiratory syndrome or the Ebola virus somehow jump from bats to, for example, camels, and they end up in humans. Although we don't have proof that this can happen because humans don't have direct contact with bats, so it is not proven how this virus can jump from bats to humans. But the Middle East respiratory syndrome is one of the viruses that have been engineered by the United States and studied by the Pentagon, as well as influenza and other diseases. And confirmation of this practice is the Obama's temporary ban in 2014 on government funding for such dual-use research. The moratorium was lifted in 2017, and experiments have continued. I don't understand how can this be legal and possible. Scientists are allowed to genetically engineer viruses in order to study them. I don't understand why and how this can be legal, but in the United States it is legal. So you have the legal protection to develop biological weapons, because genetically modified viruses, they can be used as biological weapons. The aim is to make them more lethal and more deadly. This is what they are doing. I will not take your time in detail again, but I wanted to show again documents about another disease in Georgia, tularemia. And I want to come to Ukraine. Here the Pentagon has 11 biolaboratories in this former Soviet Union country bordering on Russia. Again, according to the agreement between the United States and the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, the information under this program, it is sensitive information. So these 11 biolaboratories are not openly available to anybody who wants to look at them. The Ukrainian government is prohibited from public disclosure of sensitive information about the program, and Ukraine is obliged to transfer to the Pentagon dangerous pathogens for biological research. But the Pentagon has been granted access to certain state secrets of Ukraine in connection with the projects under the agreement. Again, the same like the case in Georgia. Biowarfare scientists under diplomatic cover. The personnel of the United States, again, performs work under diplomatic cover. I'm talking about scientists. I'm not talking about diplomats. Why do they need diplomatic cover, and why do they need diplomatic vehicles to transport what? It's strange. Why do scientists need a diplomatic vehicle? Probably to hide something. These are all the documents, the money which the Pentagon spends on each and every one of these military biolaboratories. Here is one military biolaboratory in the city of Kharkov in Ukraine. 2 years ago, in the same city, at least 20 Ukrainian soldiers died from flu-like virus in just 2 days, with 200 more being hospitalized. This is in the same city where the Pentagon has biolaboratory. Can you imagine if in the United Kingdom 20 soldiers die from flu and 200 more are hospitalized, and in the whole of the country 364 people die from flu? This would be a huge scandal. In Ukraine, this wasn't a problem. This wasn't a scandal because the Ukrainian government did not report on the dead Ukrainian soldiers in Kharkov. People didn't know about these cases because under the agreements with the United States, the Ukrainian government, this is not a sovereign government. It is prohibited from informing its own citizens on sensitive information, on information involving the US military personnel with diplomatic immunity, performing work on their own territory. Can you imagine what a government is this? They serve the interests of a foreign country, not the interests of their own citizens. A lot of other cases in Ukraine, for example, police investigate infection with incurable disease. Whatever that means, nobody knows what this disease is, but it is incurable according to documents which I read from the Ukrainian prosecutors. They call this disease incurable, but they don't name it. And they can't find the source of this incurable disease. But there are a few interesting cases involving hepatitis A. And it turned out that all the outbreaks, not only hepatitis, also botulinum toxin, I will show you in a short while, all these outbreaks, they happen in cities where the Pentagon has military biolaboratories. But the police investigates an unknown source. No, it is known. But the police of Ukraine doesn't have access to this military biolaboratory because the military personnel of the United States has diplomatic immunity. So these military biolaboratories on the sovereign territory of Ukraine, they are not under the control of Ukraine. And nobody knows what they are doing inside these military biolaboratories. Why do I show this? Because it was removed. When I published my article, this information was removed. It is related to one of the Pentagon private contractors called Southern Research Institute. And the same private contractor listed on its website what types of pathogens it's been researching. And one of the pathogens was exactly botulinum toxin, the same toxin which caused deaths in Ukraine. But they removed this information from their website. Luckily, I have backup of everything, so they can't hide it. I want to show you, because probably I don't have much time, the private American companies involved in the project in Ukraine. Again, the same company, Metabiota, which worked in Sierra Leone, which worked in Georgia. The same company appears in Ukraine. Here, interestingly, appears Russia, finally. A former Soviet defector researched anthrax with one of the private American contractors in Ukraine. The name of this Russian who defected to the United States, Ken Alibek, probably it is not very you're not familiar with him, but this is the main expert on anthrax of the Soviet Union. After his defection to the United States, he was engaged in Pentagon research projects. And it turned out that the same scientists, Soviet scientists, worked with Southern Research Institute. And Southern Research Institute is a company, a private American company, which works in Ukraine and which also worked in the past under 16 contracts between 1951 and 1962 for the US Army under this military biological weapons program. So you have the same companies from the past. They worked under biological weapons programs in the past. Now, again, the same companies 40 years later, even more, 50 years later. Now, the same companies continue to work under biological weapons programs. Here comes the US Congress. The same company, Southern Research Institute, lobbied the US Congress and the US Department of State for issues related to research and development for US intelligence. The lobbying activities coincided with the start of the Pentagon projects on biolaboratories in Ukraine and other former Soviet states. The company paid $250,000 for lobbying. The then Senator Jeff Sessions, this is the US Attorney General now, Jeff Sessions, they lobbied him for research for US intelligence, whatever that means. Research, biological research for US intelligence. And over a 10-year period, 2006 until 2016, the same American contractor in Ukraine paid $1.2 million for lobbying the US Senate, House of Representatives, and the Pentagon. And Senator Jeff Sessions' aide on Capitol Hill Watson Donald is now a senior director of Southern Research Institute. And for me, this is, I can't understand, I don't know the legislation there and here in the United Kingdom, but if in my country, somebody pays 1.2 million to the, for example, Bulgarian Parliament or the Bulgarian Ministry of Defense, this is bribe. They pay to get contracts. So this is legal in the United States. This is shocking for me. Here, I want to go directly to the bioweapons factory of the United States in the United States. It is called Dugway Proving Ground. Here, Dugway Proving Ground. And here, this facility, the Life Sciences Division at Dugway Proving Ground produces and tests aerosolized bioagents. And this is according to a report, military report, published in 2012. I was surprised to read in the public domain documents about the production of biological agents and stimulants, not only biological agents, also toxins, and I was surprised that this information is in the public domain. But see, this is special equipment, scientists, this is not from the white helmets, this is real. So see what they do. Different experiments, aerosolized viruses and bacteria and toxins. And I realized something, my explanation why this report in particular, was published. You remember Putin a few months ago, he announced that now Russia has developed a new type of nuclear missiles, and they have untraceable nuclear weapons. So I thought probably the United States publicized this information and made it available to the wider public because they want the world to know what they have and what they can do. I have no other explanation as to why they pride themselves on this. See. Dissemination by explosives. This is in the public domain. They confess that they test dissemination of biological stimulants and chemicals by explosives. Here they test them, again they test them, liquid dissemination, powder dissemination, dissemination that tests grid aerosol dissemination. So these are all components of biological weapons program, and they confessed to doing that. And my conclusion is this. They want the world to know what they have and what they can do. It is similar to what Putin did. He wanted the world to know what Russia has. Something very funny for me. The United States stole bacteria from Saddam Hussein's bioweapons factory. Yes, this is true. This bacteria, BT al-Hakam, it is named after the Saddam Hussein's bioweapons factory. It was collected in Iraq by the UN Special Commission led by the United States in 2003. It is named after al-Hakam. We don't know if there was such a bioweapons production factory, actually. This is what the CIA say here. They show a photo of this bacteria collected from al-Hakam in Iraq, this bacteria. And The same bacteria here appears in documents which I obtained from the US Federal Contracts Registry, and according to this project published in 2017, the Pentagon performs field tests with this bacteria Al-Hakam, which CNN stole from Saddam Hussein's factory, and this bacteria is used in the United States for production of GM corn resistant to pests. So people eat this bacteria, and probably they must be very thankful to Saddam Hussein for creating such bacteria. Again, look what they are doing. Special tests on bacteria and different type of simulants in a wind tunnel, again for defense. And I want to compare the field tests that the United States performed in the past with the field tests that they're performing now. You can't see any difference between what they did in the past and what they are doing now. So this means that their biological weapons program never ended. I talked to people, local people, and they told me that in 2017, they reported on a drone disseminating white powder in Chechnya. This is a republic of the Russian Federation, next to the border with Georgia. I asked the Georgian authorities how can they explain such a drone from Georgia going to Chechnya and spreading powder. They refused to comment, but I'm not surprised because there is no other explanation as to a military biological program aimed at their main rival, Russia. Interestingly, the Pentagon has a private contractor on the Russia-Georgia border. We don't know what this and why this contractor was needed for the Pentagon and what exactly job it needs to do, but the same company called Parsons Government Services International performs work for the Pentagon in Syria, Libya, Jordan, Lebanon, and we all know what happens in these countries or what is left from them. Either this company facilitates terrorists or to pass in Libya and Syria, for example, or arms them and facilitate the weapon supplies. So the same company from Syria, from Lebanon, from Libya, it is in Georgia, on the border with Russia. And drone appear. This is very, very scary. This is another Pentagon agency working and involved in the program. It is called the Save Genes. This is the name of the program, Save Genes. It is a $65 million program in gene editing. This is the sum that the Pentagon invests in gene editing of insects. And another military program called Insect Allies. GM insects are engineered to transfer modified genes to plants. The $10 million project includes both gene editing in insects and in the viruses that they transmit. Can you imagine what we eat, actually? They can produce GM insects, they can produce viruses, and they can insert these viruses, GM viruses, in the GM insects, target the plant so that the plant would be pest-free. This is their justification, of course. This is against pests. No, they just produce, and they invest $65 million to be for us to eat pest-free plants. Can you imagine if this is true? And if they really want to solve the problem with the pests, if this plant is infected with GM virus through a GM insect, can you imagine what will happen to us? And when this vegetable or fruit, when we eat it, what we actually eat. And I don't believe this explanation because otherwise it would not be the Pentagon that invests 65 million. It would be their Department for Agriculture probably, if they have such a department. Another interesting, I forget another interesting project. It is ongoing military program for genome engineering in insects. The Pentagon's stated objective is to engineer GM organisms so that they can resist certain temperatures, change their habitat and food sources. This is the document about this project, which reminded me of what the people in Georgia told me. They said that they can't kill these flies. They can't get rid of them. They are everywhere in their bathrooms. They buy them while naked, and they can't do anything. And I read this project. Really, they can produce, and they pay money for private contractors to produce GM insects which can resist different temperatures. Probably they are very successful because in Georgia people said, no, we can't do anything. These insects, these flies, they are immortal. We can't get rid of them. What is the third project? Genetically engineered humans. Probably in the beginning it sounded like a science fiction for me, but no, this is real. Here are the documents. This is not science fiction. The Pentagon wants to genetically engineer humans. This is a project called Advanced Tools for Mammalian Genome Engineering project. In this project, it is not written that they want to engineer humans. I mean, the title is something which is very, the topic is general. But when you start the documents, you see that they want to genetically engineer humans. They want to insert an additional 47th artificial chromosome into human cells. And this chromosome will deliver new genes that will be used for engineering the human body. We don't know if this project was successful or not. We have information from the US Federal Contracts Registry that this was performed last year, it was completed last year, and we don't know the results. We just have confirmation that they worked on a project involving tests on additional 47th artificial chromosome into human cells. Classified research. Here, they have written that everything here is classified. They confess, finally, they confess that this is classified and it is not openly available to anybody who wants to look at them. Classified projects called JSON reports, and these reports, they include American scientists. They were carried out by American scientists, which were paid by the Pentagon to research this: synthetic viruses, designer diseases, binary bioweapons, stealth viruses, host-swapping diseases. So these are the diseases, for example, like the Ebola virus. Somehow they jump from the bat, they jump into the humans. This means host-swapping diseases, and according to partial information, I don't know what exactly the JSON reports include because they are classified, but I found another report which luckily wasn't classified, and in this military report, authored by a scientist from the US Air Force University, It is called Biotechnology, Genetically Engineered Pathogens. In this report, they cite the Jason's reports. They forgot that they're classified. No, serious, this is not a joke. And they provided information about the classified reports. Not in full, but at least we have any idea about the secretive US military program involving 5 types of genetically modified pathogens that can be used as bioweapons. One of the bioweapon, for example, it is ethnic biological weapon. This was researched, but it is classified and we don't know the results. Ethnic biological weapons are theoretical weapons that aim to harm primarily people of specific ethnicities or genotypes. And what I found was that the United States collects biological material from certain ethnic groups, Russians and Chinese. These are the documents. But this is for defense.
Just two minutes, Liliana.
Okay. So if you want to read what types of biological samples, DNA from Russians, the Pentagon has been collecting, you can read the documents again from Chinese documents about that. I want to talk for 1 minute about the so-called tobacco vaccines. The Pentagon has been investing millions of dollars, at least $100 million in vaccines production from tobacco plants. This means that they use the tobacco, the plant, and insert viruses, for example, Ebola virus or influenza, insert into this plant so that the vaccine can be developed in this plant. So they used the plants as a substance for the vaccine. And interestingly, the companies which were awarded the lucrative Pentagon contracts, they are owned by Philip Morris and British American Tobacco. So now British American Tobacco and Philip Morris, through their subsidiaries, produce vaccines. In conclusion, I want to quote Article 8 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, which defines biological experiments as war crimes. The United States, however, is not a state party to the international treaty, and it can't be held accountable. This is, in short, the facts that I found. I'm continuing to work on this project, journalistic project, and hope to be able to release and broadcast a documentary soon. So I'll be lucky if I have your comments so that you let me know what is interesting for the viewers and what you want to see in such a documentary. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a truly outstanding presentation. And maybe you can show people what it's like to try and get in the elevator outside here. But Diliana, just before, oh, you've taken the headset off. Oh, no, come with me. Yeah, the microphone here. Because in just 1 minute, I would just like you to share with the audience what you uncovered in terms of the contract between Porton Down in the UK and the London Underground.
I found documents proving that the Pentagon has invested $70 million in programs at Porton Down. The same scheme like the Pentagon Biolaboratories in Ukraine, in Georgia. Porton Down was funded by the Pentagon to perform projects involving viruses, bacteria, toxins, nerve agents. But this was work performed and paid for by the Pentagon, not by you as taxpayers, meaning that this, I was asking myself, would the British people approve of such project? No, you will not approve of such project. That is why they are doing these biological experiments behind your back, funded by a foreign country, because you will not approve of that, I'm sure.
And the testing and the contract between Transport for London, the 2013 contract between Transport for London and Porton Down.
According to these documents, Porton Down scientists performed tests on unwitting commuters at the London Tube. They released gas. We don't know exactly what they released because what they say turned out to be not the real gas used. They write in the documents that they are allowed to change and redact information if it concerns national security issues. So they will tell you we used harmless gas, but we are not sure if this is true and what exactly gas was used.
You might want to think before you use the London Underground again. But if you want to, it's outstanding research, and thank goodness for researchers like Diliana Ganshiva.